Just like any amazing video game, Silksong is filled to the brim with Easter eggs and references. Some are extremely obvious, others are a little more speculative, and some are just straight up unnecessary. One of these comes right from the main menu, as this is where you can use the famed Konami code. First popularized by Contra, this is a secret cheat code that is activated by pressing a specific combination of keys, usually giving the player power-ups or extra lives to make the game easier. It has been referenced hundreds of times throughout many different pieces of media, and Silksong is no exception. But instead of giving you an easier difficulty, it does the exact opposite, unlocking the Steel Soul mode instantly, without the player having to complete the game. So if anyone out there is struggling with Silksong, give this code a shot, you will struggle even more. The main source of extremely blatant references, however, come from Castlevania Symphony of the Night, a 1997 Metroidvania game developed by guess who? Konami, which follows Alucard in Dracula's castle. The original Hollow Knight took a lot of inspiration from Castlevania in general, and Silksong is up there as well. One of the things the player will immediately notice is Hornet's animations. They are ripped straight from Alucard. This includes the turnaround, the naked slab walk, the diagonal slash, and even the super jump. The Symphony of the Night nods don't end there, however, as Hornet's backflip is also quite similar to Richter Belmont's one as well. Hopefully I spelled that shit right. In the Underworks bench room, Hornet can pay a set amount of rosaries to confess her sins at this booth. This very much resembles the confessional from Symphony of the Night, where Alucard can listen to a ghost confessing her sins. Both of these interactions serve no purpose gameplay-wise, and no path opens up. They only exist for world-building purposes. A similar thing can be found in Hollow Knight with a telescope, so this is likely another nod to Castlevania. Lastly, the lead-up and the arena of the cogwork dancers in the choral chambers is a very blatant nod to the hallways and the clock room in Symphony of the Night as well, with both areas featuring very strong enemies and serving as the final step before the final section of the game. Wow, there are so many Castlevania references to the point Team Cherry should have just called the game Hollow Knight Symphony of the Song. A few references actually come from real life as well, and wow, didn't expect the developers to be touching grass. One of them is the motif that plays throughout the whole game, in specific soundtracks and even when activating the big bells. This melody is known as the Dies Irae, a very old melody meant to invoke a feeling of impending doom. It fits the general theme of the game very well, and I can definitely see why Team Cherry and Chris Larkin decided to use it so much. It even appears in the most unexpected places, like the Act 3 Needle in Trap song, so it may be a bit overused. Garment is also likely a reference to Don Quixote, a very popular literary archetype who is noble yet very delusional, but the difference between the two is that Garment is a Chad. The first location you meet him in is also Greymoor, which has many windmills in the background. This is likely a stretch though, and it's probably just a coincidence. Of course, this wouldn't be a Hollow Knight reference video without mentioning Metroid. Metroid is considered the origin point of Metroidvanias. I mean, the name is right there. And just like Hollow Knight, Silksong has a lot of nods to it, like the Bell Eater boss in Act 3, which is a direct reference to the Metroid Zero Mission boss Direm. Both of these bosses use their centipede body to block the arena and prevent the player from escaping, with both of their heads needing to be hit to deal damage. The sequence where Hornet loses all of her equipment and is forced to play without it might also be a reference to the sequence where Samus is shot down by space pirates in Zero Mission as well, and is forced to find her equipment while being extremely weak. But it's also possible that the way Hornet gets captured and brought into the slab is a reference to Dark Souls 3. The cage these Wardenflies carry very much resembles the cage of the enemies in the Undead Settlement. The player can even enter one of these cages to be thrown into a new area. We know that Villy and Minari have played the game, according to this one long forgotten interview from 2014, and both of their games feature a death mechanic very similar to it. But this is likely a stretch. There are so many instances of characters being captured and stripped off of their equipment to make a clear connection to anything here. It's very likely that this whole segment is just inspired by this concept, rather than a homage to something specific. Also, this dead bug with the map in the slab may be a reference to the highly acclaimed hit TV show Rhythm Break, but I don't know, I haven't watched it. What I am confident is a Dark Souls reference, however, is Bile Water. In the original Dark Souls, there exists an area called Blight Town. This is a place located beneath the sewer system of a dying city, transformed beyond recognition due to the vase thrown here. It features these massive wooden structures the inhabitants built with these shifting floors that act as traps for the player walking on them. And of course, these annoying poison blow dart shooting enemies. At the bottom, there is a massive poison swamp that really screws up a ton of players. Bile Water is literally all of this. It It was once a clean area that got totally transformed due to the vase thrown here by the Citadel. It has wooden structures and traps everywhere built by the local inhabitants. The primary enemies literally shoot blow darts at you, and the most glaring similarity is the poison swamp that is everywhere in the area, that being the muck effect. I think the aspect that ties these locations together completely though is just how hated they are by the community. People hated Blighttown, and a lot of them still do. Bilewater has had that exact same fate, and for a good reason. Both of these locations were intentionally designed this way to provoke player discussions and frustration, and I refuse to believe that Bilewater isn't one big homage to Blighttown. If you're wondering what I think of these areas, I really like them. Yeah, I may be insane, but what I also really like is when people subscribe and join my Patreon, where for just $2 you get everything you ever wished for. God, I love self-plugging. Another possible Dark Souls nod is the Father of the Flame boss fight, which could be inspired by the best Dark Souls boss ever, the Bed of Chaos. Both of them are static bosses that do not move, both of them are gimmick fights, both of them use fire and are made out of wood, and lastly, both of them are controlled by a tiny bug in the core. Of course, this could be one major coincidence, but I like to think it's intentional. And just like how Loam is a reference to capitalism, the Mist is a clear homage to a recurring location in Zelda games, the Lost Woods. Both of these areas are repeating mazes that require the player to navigate them through a variety of means. At the end of the Mist, the player stumbles upon the Exhaust Organ, where they can fight the Phantom, a boss that is straight up stolen from the Phantom of the Opera. This is a character with a broken mask just like the one the Phantom wears, and while I do not know much about musicals, I know that the organ is used in a musical as well. If you're an ultra skeptic and are somehow not convinced yet, the Phantom's theme is called Phantom of the Organ internally, so there you go. This one is a bit more speculative, but I believe the concept of Mount Fae and the climb itself is likely a homage to Celeste. Both Mount Fae and Mount Celeste are real mountains in Canada, and when you climb to the top of Mount Fae, you get a double jump, the same ability Madeline gets when she's close to the top in her own game. So this could be some sort of nod to the game by Team Cherry, or at least a direct inspiration. Now, let's talk a bit about the Coral Tower. This is a late game location locked behind Act 3, where the player is forced to battle floors of different enemies before they're met with the boss waiting at the top, Crust King Khan. This whole concept is very reminiscent of the arcade ladder / tower from Mortal Kombat, a special game mode where the player battles floors of different characters before fighting the main boss at the top. In two instances, that boss being Shao Kahn. Both the Crust King Khan and Shao Kahn have somewhat similar designs, and to be honest, their names are literally the same. However, this whole dungeon and the boss were created by a backer, possibly back in the days of Hollow Knight's release, as there was a tier on the old Kickstarter that allowed backers to create a dungeon and a boss for the game, which ended up in Silksong instead, so it is very likely that this was the backer referencing Mortal Kombat, not the developers. I've also seen some people make the connection that Silksong is inspired by the Ghibli movie Arrietty, which follows a girl in a red dress using a needle and exploring a massive world. However, I think this movie might have been an inspiration to Hornet herself back during Hollow Knight's development. Some people also seem to think that Vido is making JoJo poses while fighting Hornet. And yeah, I mean, I can see it, but like, come on, they clearly aren't the exact same. Making JoJo poses requires immense concentration and training. I doubt Vido is able to handle that. Also, the Bornak enemy located in the ducts is likely a reference to the Half-Life Barnacle enemy. They both have the exact same functionality and look very similar. It's even in the name, so it's probably deliberate. And with that, I think there is just one clear reference to go over, that being Revolutionary Girl Utena. If you didn't know, which I assume you didn't, Utena is an anime about sword fighting. The reason why we are talking about it is due to the similarities between the second Lace fight and the Rose Field fight in the movie. Now, I haven't watched this anime, so I don't know the full context, but both of these fights take place in a field full of roses on a very thin platform. Both of them have a similar gate to enter that field, and both of them are, of course, following characters that use weapons. The only difference is really how the Rose Field is white in Silksong, but that is due to lore reasons. It is a very clear reference, and I've also seen people claim how the character of Lace could be inspired by the character of Nanami from the same show, as their laugh is very similar, but I don't know, man. I'll let the Utena fans explain this one if they even exist. Finally, there is only one more thing to talk about, the most important Silksong character, Mr. Mushroom. The Mushroom guy is interesting because all of his dialogue lines are actually some sort of references and Easter eggs. It is just unclear what most of those are referencing. In the first game, Mr. Mushroom was speculated to reference older Team Cherry games and possibly games like Castlevania and Pikmin. In Silksong, however, while we are not sure what many of these dialogue lines actually mean, the community has been able to potentially connect two of them, while I can kind of see what another one would be about. The first one being Conversation Tree in Far Fields very likely references the game Peak. Elements conspiring against you may refer to the countless hazards in the game, like the rain and sandstorms. The dialogue literally talks about the peak and climbing itself, and the little one left behind could be the mascot of the game, Bing Bong. This one I am very confident about. One that I myself thought about was that Conversation 4 in Greymoor may be referencing Deltarune in some shape or form. The mention of flowers and light kinda makes sense, and taking the journey home with you could reference Dark World and the Light World, but who knows. The last one, which I am very unsure of, is during Conversation 5 in the Slab, which could be referencing Expedition 33. The only line that makes sense here is the last one, For Those Who Come Next, which is a major line in Expedition 33, but that's really it from what I can gather. Speaking of Expedition 33, I've noticed people spamming this specific image online and saying that it must be a reference. And no guys, it's just a dialogue line from a Weaver Chamber, come on. However, we all know what the most important Easter egg in the entire game is. The fact that Sherma mentions doubters and believers from r/Silksong. Alright, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed and learned something interesting. I'm sorry that it's a bit shorter than expected, and if some of the references you thought of are not actually in the video. The game is still very young, and a lot of references will likely be found way later as time goes on, especially the Mr. Mushroom ones. I wanted to get this video out sooner than my usual projects because I want to fully focus on the follow-up to my cut content video, which you should check out by the way if you're still here. The ACMI mission is still in effect, and I will leave the Google Doc in the description and the comments. Consider subscribing and checking out my Patreon to support these videos, and as always, take care of yourselves and have a good night.